I'm Fareed Zakaria. I am the editor of Newsweek International, and I write a column for Newsweek and Newsweek International. I'm going to talk a little bit about education, about the state of American education. It's actually not as bad as you might think, but let's start by pointing out that America dominates the world in one area of education that is, in some ways, the most important area, and that is higher education. American universities are, without any question, the best in the world. If you look at the various rankings of universities, the top 20, 18 are American. The top 50, 32 are American. If you look at the places that people want to go to do the most advanced research, they're mostly American. If you look at where Nobel Prizes are won, they're mostly American. So that's one area of education the United States does extraordinarily well. What about secondary education, high schools? The United States does very badly in those international tests you've heard about. But a lot of the reason is that American averages are brought down by very low-performing inner-city public schools. Finally, let's take a look at the overall philosophy of American education, what America teaches, how it teaches it. Most of the world teaches its students how to take tests. American education teaches people how to think, how to solve problems. This is much more useful in the real world. So as you can see, I'm a big fan of American education. Now, there are several deep problems, and the most worrisome part about the state of American education is our problems are in some ways getting worse or not getting fixed, and the rest of the world is beginning increasingly to copy the best parts of the American system. So the rest of the world is moving closer and closer to the United States as virtues. Meanwhile, we have our vices. We have about a third of our schools that are utterly and totally dysfunctional. We have funding in the public universities getting so thin and so bad that we are effectively destroying our public universities, which has been one of the crown jewels of American education. And we have increasingly focused on non-scientific, non-technical education and enhanced all kinds of softer subjects which are less rigorous and frankly less attractive to employers in the workplace. At base, the problem with American education is we have not turned it into the kind of top national priority it needs to be. We're not focusing on it enough. We're not focusing on the key reforms that need to take place to make the system more flexible, more fast-moving, more dynamic, more merit-oriented. We're also not working at it hard enough. There isn't a sense of urgency among education secretaries and officials, teachers, or students. I mean, the final thing to remember in all this is we want to take it a little easier. You can solve all the problems in the system and you can get better teachers, but ultimately you need to have a sense of urgency among students that the learning of skills in a globalized world is an absolutely essential part of how we're going to compete. That sometimes means doing things that are painful in the short term. But in education, as in everything else in life, no pain, no gain. Thank you. I think learning about religion is absolutely essential to understanding the world. Large parts of the world, large populations within the world are motivated by religion, and it shouldn't be a kind of black hole that people don't know anything about it. I think the introduction of religion to explain natural phenomenon, to explain scientific phenomenon, such as a class of biology or a class on evolution, I think is very dangerous. We are trying to help students understand the world using analytic techniques, scientific techniques, experimentation, and to introduce into that a faith-based system that does not rely on any kind of evidence or scientific proof, is to actually subvert the entire process of scientific learning. People can believe whatever they wish to believe, but they don't need to go to a school and attend a biology class to believe something on faith. The United States has one of the shortest school days in the world. It has the shortest school year in the world, that is to say the longest summer. It also has the shortest day in terms of the number of hours in the day. I think we have to recognize that these were systems set up when the United States was an agricultural country, vast continental nation. It would take a great deal of time for people to move back and forth from their school year to their farms where they were required to do certain tasks. We're not in that world anymore. We're in a world in which everybody is competing in a knowledge economy, and in particular where rich countries like the United States have to train their citizens, their workers, to understand and acquire more and more knowledge to move up the value chain. In other words, it's crazy that we have the shortest school year in the world. But the more important point is if you look at the way kids, particularly in weak schools, test, in September compared to June, what you see is a very dramatic fall off in knowledge, in acquisition of skills, in problem-solving capacities. In other words, they get slack over the summer. They lose skills over the summer because it is simply too long. I don't know how easily this problem can be solved because a big obstacle stands in the way, which is the desire of teachers' unions to pay their members as much as possible for the shortest work year possible. But it is a crucial change that needs to happen. Education is still a very labor-intensive process. That is to say, we still believe that a classroom with 10 students and one professor or one teacher is a classroom in which students will learn much better than one professor and 1,000 students. Having that one professor teaching just 10 students for an hour or two, 3 times a week is a very inefficient system, except if we believe it is the best way to deliver a quality education. That's probably the most important reason why education continues to rise in costs. The other is scientific education has become more and more expensive as science has become a group process with enormous and elaborate labs and increasingly expensive equipment. The final reason why education in the United States has continued to rise in costs is probably the same reason healthcare costs rise, which is that in both cases, the consumer is not actually paying for the education. The vast majority of Americans receive some kind of federal funding, loans, grants, loans from universities, which means that the cost is disguised and spread around. It's what economists would call third-party payments. Education is a very unusual kind of business. It's not really a business, and as a result, you can't really judge it by the yardsticks of traditional economics. There's just a few ways in which education is not a business, and I think at the end of the day, we should all be thankful it's not just a business.